So it's kind of cool that basically you are able to just sort of dive into this past nostalgia with not too much cost to you, I guess, and be able to show your kids that, show your little brother that, show, or whoever, me kind of being a father now, it's kind of nice to know that those kind of options are out there. So when my son grows up, I can be like, well, you see, this Mario game's pretty awesome, but Daddy grew up playing Mario Brothers and Mario Brothers 2 and 3. Give this a try, and he could sort of he can work his way up the way I did. I mean, it's kind of how I want it to be, you kind of, a lot of times people don't appreciate the games they have now as much as they did, unless if you were kind of a classic gamer like I was, where it just sort of turns out to be, you see where all these games came from, or where the influencer's being taken from. A lot of the times you play a game, and some people who are new to this kind of stuff, they don't see the connections. They don't see when they play Halo that there's bits and pieces of Half-Life in there. There's bits and pieces of even as far back as Doom. You can just dissect all these new games and realize that there's influence from all these many different generations of gaming. You play Super Mario Galaxy, and there are some people who that might just be the only Mario they've ever played. And then you go back and you look at Mario 64, and that's where Mario first jumped into the world of 3D, and you see influences there, and you go back and you see the crazy power-ups of Super Mario Brothers 3, and you're like, oh wow, and of course Yoshi in Super Mario World, and back further, and and it kind of makes you appreciate the experience, or in sometimes make you become more critical of the experience. Like more recently with Metroid Other M, a lot of people who have followed Samus through the years from the very beginning and played them all, and you get to this point, and you kind of see the natural progression in something like Metroid Prime, and then you see that, and people kind of butted against that at first, and then they played it and realized just how worthy it was of being a Metroid game, and so it ended up being an excellent little thing. And so people accepted the Metroid Prime series, and then you get to Metroid Other M, and there's just a lot of fans who are disappointed with it because they feel like they took so much away from that classic feel. And again, it's all based on perspective. It's based off of how far back you've been a Metroid fan. Have you just played the Metroid Prime series? Have you played all the Metroid games on the Game Boy Advance? Or are you all the way back to when it first came out on the NES? And so the whole Retro Resurgence, I think, is a wonderful little thing, and I hope it keeps going. And I hope developers realize if they are going to remake these classics that they have to go back and stay true to their original. I mean, look back at something like Bionic Commando, and you look at that and you see how the rearmed versions were much more accepted than the remake version of it. So you never know. As long as developers keep the classics in mind, I think this is going to be a wonderful trend. They'll just keep going and going, and so support it. Buy the classics. Go on your virtual console. Download those classics that you know and love, even if you still own it, because then that'll tell developers to keep it up. And that's what I like about it, is that developers are realizing that once they pushed away from it for so long. They pushed away during the PlayStation era and the N64 era, and they were trying so hard to try to distance themselves from it. And then with the GameCube and PS2 and Xbox era, they sort of kind of started getting the idea that they needed it, and then it sort of the Game Boy Advance came around and kind of proved their worth, and that there was still a market for this, and that history needed them for the most part. And so it's definitely a fun trip. And like I said, from a fatherly point of view, this is wonderful. And that's kind of why I started collecting consoles. My wife was pregnant at the time, and I found a Sega Genesis at a rummage sale, and it just sort of bit me right there. I'm just like, I have to find the rest. And then I found an N64 and Super Nintendo and so on and so on. And it's just kind of like, and I even have an Atari, and it's like, I might not have a ton of games for these, but it's kind of like, I kind of want my son to experience the same thing that I did. I mean, that kind of brings up a different debate. Are these virtual console versions more fun to play on the original console, or is it fine just playing it on the virtual console, depending on who you are? I personally feel playing it on the original console feels so much more nostalgic, and it's the right way to play it. But of course, if you don't have them, then the virtual console's fine. But I digress again. I just had in my head, I'm just like, this is kind of my history. I kind of grew up, and it helped feed my imagination and helped feed my art, because I draw on the side, and I sort of did artwork, and Mario and all those Mega Man sort of helped drive me to be an artist even. It's so weird that video games would do that, because you'd think it would take away from your imagination, but all it did is sort of build it up. And that sort of finding that Sega Genesis on a rummage sale for like $10 was just a wonderful thing, because it just made me realize how important those old consoles were. Because I went through that phase. Where I threw out my old Nintendo back when I was, I don't know, 15 or 14 or whatever, or 16, thinking I'd never want to play it again. And then a year later, I realized how stupid that was. And so, as I grow older, I want my son to experience that too. I want him to pick up the Atari 2600 controller and play Asteroids, like I played Asteroids, and play Copter Command, and then pick up the Nintendo and play Mario, and the Sega and play Sonic, the N64 and play Star Fox 64, and Super Smash Brothers, and the Sega Saturn, and play Virtual Fighter, and just work his way up through the systems like I kind of did. And so he'll have that respect, so he can be that critical and realize, just because they're throwing on all these fancy graphics and trying to add all these achievements doesn't necessarily mean it's a great game. If game developers forget their roots, if they forget what brought them to where they are, then the game's not going to be any good. They can throw in every whistle and every graphical effect they possibly can to try and get fans to come to the game, but if they completely forget what they're trying to do, then the fans aren't going to be there. They're not going to accept the game, because subliminally or not, fans base their games off of the games that come before them. And that's why the more knowledge you have of this, of seeing where these games have come from, the better kind of game reviewer and player you're going to be. And that's basically what the importance is of the whole Retro Resurgence, is reminding the fans of their roots, even if they weren't around for that. And that's why it makes it important. It's kind of like ammunition, so you don't become another one of the statistics, the mindless zombies out there just buying a game based off of what you're told instead of what you feel, And that's kind of what the whole Retro Resurgence, why it's important to me, and why I think it's good that these classic games are out there, and why everyone should refamiliarize themselves with it. If they've played it in the past, go play Ghosts and Goblins, find out how hard it was again, and realize how much influence it had on today's kind of hack and slash kind of games. Go play Ninja Gaiden and see just how important that was to ninja games of today. Go play Mario, go play Samus, go play Mega Man, go play all those old games, and you might just find out that you're having more fun with them than they are nowadays. And I think the developers out there who can grasp onto those kind of fans, who can grasp onto that kind of emotion from the past, I suppose, whether it be 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the Stone Ages, that's when they used to play video games by tapping on the rocks, maybe. Who knows? Maybe a time traveler gave them video games. You never know. They have to go somewhere, right? But, so, kind of remember your roots, and that'll make you a better gamer, and the basic premise of this is making you a better gamer, I think. And so, how many more times can I say that, right? So, I don't know. I guess that's kind of my opinion on it. For now, I could go off on it a little more, but I think I'd just be repeating myself. The Retro Resurgence is wonderful. I think it should stay around forever. These, re-imagings are also great. Don't knock them, because if they're built in the image of the past, I honestly think they'll still kind of introduce new generations to the classics in a way that they'll understand a little more than just how it was. I mean, kind of like how GoldenEye and the such is. But remember, pass it on. It's a good way of passing it on to the next generations, like I am to my son. These games weren't meant to be forgotten in any way. And the fact that now you can download them on the Virtual Console is great. Or even if you don't want to do that, find them on eBay, find them on Amazon, find them wherever you can. Find them at a rummage sale like I'm finding all of mine. And, basically play these games. Don't pass it up. If you're at a rummage sale and you see an old Nintendo or an Atari there, friggin' buy it. Even if you don't think you're going to use it, buy it. Because one day, you know what's going to happen? You're going to end up seeing that thing sitting in the corner, and there's going to be some game that came with it at the rummage sale sitting in there, and you go, I haven't played that in eons. And you're going to hook that thing up to an old television, and you're going to play that thing for hours on end. Whether an Atari, a Super Nintendo, even as recent as a PS2. Don't just rely on the Virtual Consoles. Hard drives crash. Get some sort of hard copy here, too. But I'm just a big fan of it, and I lost that for a while. I honestly thought I wouldn't go back to that, and I was stupid for doing it, because I threw out a lot of those old memories, and I had to pay money to get it back, basically. I had to buy a new Nintendo and all those old games. But they're cheap, Either get it on the Virtual Console, get it off eBay, find it, support it. It'll make you a better gamer. Anyways. Well, that's all for now, and as always, I'd love to hear from you, so please leave a comment or give a shout back or subscribe to my channel if you like what you hear. Until next time, game fans, this is Twitch. Keep playing.